The Bond team at MGM have had 30 years to think about what their audience wants.
I think they're looking for good entertainment, and they have certain expectations about what they're going to see. And action, adventure, romance, intrigue, mystery. They like to have it served up in a surprising way.
Well, it's pure escapist fare. And, you know, whether it's Bond or Indiana Jones or Star Wars, it's almost, you know, check your brain at the box office and just take a 2-hour sleigh ride.
The philosophy has always been in action films to try to tell the film in action and keep the words down a minimum. So they have an appeal that transcends language. They get over language barriers quite easily.
He's out on his own. And out for revenge.
Strangely enough, Bond was very popular in the United States before it was popular in the overseas markets. The film, which was designed as a British movie, exploded in the United States and did not catch up in the rest of the world until about the 4th or 5th movie.
While they're definitely English, they have a more universal appeal, and I think that's because the producers and the writing was being done by Americans who were over in England. And so they kind of brought another style of movie making. They brought an American style of movie making to a British subject in a British location.
We don't want too many guards back here. In fact, very few.
And so while they're British films, because they have British directors and mostly British cast and crews, they had a pacing and a style that was kind of American. So the combination of the two just took off and worked quite well.
We want some big fire explosions and lots of smoke, particularly barrels of smoke, fire in the water, going off in the water, people falling into the water.
When you sort of look back at our plots, they seem a little exotic at the time, but they tend in retrospect to be plausible. Dr. No was toppling rockets at Cape Canaveral to try to interrupt the American space program. Goldfinger wanted to steal all the gold in Fort Knox. In Moonraker, we went out into outer space, but we used the space shuttle to get there, and it wasn't all that implausible. We've kind of been on the leading edge of science, but in our own time frame. We're not futuristic or science fiction. On the last film, we spent about $34 million making the film. And then the marketing of the film cost about $35 million. So we spend as much, and we're very typical. In fact, we tend to be a little more conservative than most. That ratio is typical of any large action adventure film. The amount of effort that goes into the marketing of the film is very often as much as it costs to actually make the film.
Bond, in effect, has written the book on how you promote a big international, high-grossing action-adventure picture. And whereas other producers and distributors pick and choose which elements they're going to put together to make their campaign, Bond literally runs through the entire gamut. They go so far as to bring the exhibitors from a country to the set during the shooting and give them a taste of what's going on. Extreme lengths are gone to stimulate the excitement, interest, and anticipation for the new Bond film.
Another aspect of the marketing is the media plan, and this one's for the United States, and there's one of these prepared for each of the territories. What you do here is figure out how you're going to spend your money, and where you're going to spend it, how much goes on television, how much goes in the media as advertising in newspapers, magazines, and radio spots, and how much is going to be devoted to bringing the media to you for the junkets, and how much is going to be spent on touring plans, where you bring the cast to the various territories.
At the Viennese premiere of The Living Daylights, the press met the cast of the film. The other essential elements, the cars and the high-tech gadgetry, have already been incorporated into the film as part of a marketing deal with major worldwide corporations.
With Bond, you need slick, fancy cars. You need all sorts of high-tech equipment. Yes, you're going to need, whether it's a snowmobile or a kind of fast boat or a helicopter or what have you, you're going to need these products. In the past, both Sony and now Philips have been involved in a number of films. And when they get behind the product and do local promotions, so that you may get 50 video recorders from Philips to use for contests, and it gets you off the movie page. And the way you get that extra audience is getting off the movie page. Whether you're on the society page because you've run a premiere, or whether you're on page 28 and they've got a half page for a contest. It gets people thinking about Bond in parts of the newspaper. It's all part of broadening the spectrum. And the more you hit the people, the more you get them thinking about Bond. It's a form of brainwashing. There's no other word for it, really.
When you get on his bad side, your number is up.
You know, different media work in different countries. For example, in France, posting is the key to your campaign because you can't buy television. But what it says to you in France is that the image of your poster has to be letter perfect.
This one's for the United States and Canada, and it shows Bond very directly, looking at you, the guns pointed straight at you, exotic women, very prominent, sort of a promise of action. On the other hand, we have, for the foreign market, a much more traditional style poster. Here there are cartouches of some of the action we're going to see, and of course the logo, which everyone, no matter what language they speak, can instantly read, and they know what this is all about. And these posters are locally adapted, and not only changing the words, but also some of the elements get moved around, and they're used in different formats. Although they get the same film, they kind of sort of presented in a more, in a local way, in a way that appeals to the local sensibilities.
Bond is the Iron Man in China, or mainland China, and the Electric Man in Taiwan, and God knows what they call him in Indonesia. We have just started trading on a regular basis in Indonesia, and the next Bond will be the first that we directly market in Indonesia. So I don't know what he's called there. Korea comes up with some bizarre names, and they also have hooked into the Iron Man.
On the other hand, in Japan, they go for much more esoteric names. License to Kill was something like Death Has the Scent of Roses, for example. It's a sort of Japanese haiku-style titles, you know, little enigmas that you kind of have to work out. That's much more appealing to the Japanese sensibility.
It may sound strange, but we send our Japanese trailers into places like Colombia, Peru, Chile, because they are more action-oriented, and those audiences are more action-oriented. And very often, we cross-pollinate. Because of the number of Japanese who live and work in São Paulo, we sent the Japanese trailer down there. Our Brazilian manager loved it so much and thought, hey, this thing is going to work in other places. And suddenly it was being used in Santiago, Chile, and Lima, Peru, and Montevideo. And all it took was getting a negative, striking some prints without Japanese subtitles, and putting in Spanish subtitles. And it worked. We did tremendously well with the film.
Well, I think the world is becoming similar in the mass media culture. Media has become more sophisticated. So we had much less really media distinctions in the early days. We just had maybe one campaign, one image that would go out. We kind of left it to local people to decide. Today, we're much more aware of it. It's a more sophisticated marketing in a global way. And in some ways, they try to tailor it much more than they used to the local market.